Ohio State beat Penn State yesterday. We were on the sidelines to witness it all there in Happy Valley. 111,000 and change. The biggest crowd in Beaver Stadium history. And this was a 4 Chalai Classic. I put 4 solid Chalai on this game. Very entertaining. I'm glad we picked this one to go to. We nailed, I think, the whole pressure aspect of this game. You remember last week in the lead up to this thing, everybody talked about James Franklin and Ryan Day, which is fair. We did too. But I got taken to task last week a little bit because I said, it's not even close. There's more pressure on Ryan Day than there ever thought about being on James Franklin in this game. And my reasoning was very simple. I could imagine a world where Penn State lost this game. I've seen that before. I could not imagine a world where Ohio State lost this game and things remain the same. Let me put it that way. And I think in retrospect, I was right because this was a close game. It was a competitive game. It turned out the way Ohio State wanted it to. I didn't learn a ton of things about either team. I think we've maybe verified some things about Ohio State. So in one sense, if you watch this sport from a casual perspective, you saw the outcome and you said, that's the way it always plays out with these teams. On the other hand, well, okay, but there were questions. Ohio State looked shaky. In fact, I wrote down here on this piece of paper, Ohio State was very aware of the situation. I was around Ryan Day. I was around that team a lot leading up to and then after this game. And it doesn't really matter if you weren't because he said a lot in the press conference in the postgame about kind of it's like if I shook this Zevia up actually right here and then I popped the top on it, that moment was the moment they won this game. There was so much pressure around this program this week. Now, it's a privilege to even be in that position. Age-old adage. Pressure is a privilege. They believe that there. But my main reason for picking them was I thought that deep down in the DNA, just the guts of that program, there was a will to win. And I said that on last week's show. Ryan Day said it like 50 times in the postgame yesterday because here's the thing. Jeremiah Smith, Emeka Egbuka didn't go off. They threw a pick 6 in their opening series, I believe. They did all that stuff. They found themselves down by double digits early, and they just gutted out a win. If you've ever been part of an organization, if you've ever been part of a team that willed themselves to winning something, it's the most rewarding feeling in the world. Because anyone can win when they play like Ole Miss did yesterday. When your fastball, when you're spotting your fastball, and then your changeup's also working, and then you got to get me over curveball that really becomes a strikeout curveball, everybody's going to win if you're really good, talent-wise, when you can bring that. But Ohio State didn't bring that yesterday. It was just the net result. It was the cumulative effect of guys here and units there just pulling a little bit harder because they knew there was no other option. And when you will your way to a win, you sit there just exhausted in the glow of the win, and you bask in it for a second, you celebrate and all that. But what you think to yourself is you think, someday down the road, I'll peak. Like this team, whether they're right or wrong, they look in the mirror and they say, down the road, we'll peak. We didn't yesterday, but we had no other option. Our back was against the wall, and we willed our way to a win. Don't overlook that stuff because, not every team's capable of that. Most of them aren't, actually. And if you've ever been around it, I've been around it. I've been on the plus and negative side of it. It doesn't always have to be at the highest levels. Like I remember when I was in high school, we went down to Crisp County, Georgia, and we played Crisp County in round 1 of the Georgia High School State Playoffs. There was a kid down there, I think by the name of Dwayne Farmer, big left-handed pitcher, exactly what you would expect a South Georgia left-handed pitcher to look like. And I remember the afternoon they eliminated us in the first round of the GHSA playoffs. I remember vividly thinking on the bus ride home, that dude just willed them to a win. It's not a spectacular team. I don't even remember what they did after that. He just willed them to a win. And so that's high school. No one knows that game happened, but the same thing happened yesterday. You've got a couple of guys that you know, and maybe they go off, maybe they don't. You got a head coach whose name you know. You got some coordinators whose name you know. It's just, you got to find a way. And then down the stretch, you hope you'll get hot and you'll get momentum and all that stuff. But that's the Ohio State side of things. And now they've got very winnable games the rest of the way. If Indiana goes into Columbus, Ohio and beats them, they didn't deserve to be there anyway. I'll put it that way. If Purdue or Northwestern or Michigan beat them, they didn't deserve to be there anyway. They should be able to take care of business, and that's not disrespecting anyone. That's just calling it like I see it with Ohio State. And so maybe they've earned the right. Maybe they'll earn the right to get another shot at Oregon. But the Penn State side of things hurts big time here. I felt like, standing on the field, that 10-0 should have changed everything. So you go in this game, I went into this game feeling like it was a 55-45 Ohio State proposition. Slight lean towards Ohio State to win it. But then it's 10-0 Penn State. Put forth a half-decent drive to get up 3-0, pick six, 10-0. You got them on the ropes. Their offensive line's been a mess. Their quarterback has to be shaken mentally after he just threw a pick six to start the game. And you have the defense and home field that you think you can lean on. What do you have to do at that point? At that point, just think it out loud. You're midway through the first quarter. You got a 10-0 lead on Ohio State. If you can scratch out 14 or 17 more points, max, that should be good enough. You should feel like getting the mid-20s, we'll be able to win this game. 3 points the rest of the way. It's just inexcusable. Don't care who the opponent is. When you got them in your building and you perceive yourself as a top 5 team, that's inexcusable. The offense was non-existent. Being able to push the ball downfield, non-existent. These aren't new problems for Penn State. It's just that you are used to having to match or maybe play catch-up in these moments. But when you got a 10-0 lead, I turned to my left and right. Either side, people were standing on the field with me. One of them was a former player whose name I shall not mention. And I said, this is their game. This is y'all's game now. And it was, and then it wasn't. Ohio State just did exactly what they did from that point on. Do you realize, I want you to listen to this. Maybe someone out there didn't watch the game yesterday. Maybe you just saw the final. A lot of you are traveling. A lot of you go to your own games on Saturday. Here's all you need to know. This isn't really a padlock stat. It kind of is, though. Yeah, why not? Padlock stat. Do you realize Penn State's leading rushers were a tight end and a quarterback? And do you realize their leading receiver was a running back? That is the Penn State offense in a nutshell. I'm going to say it again for effect because I think some of it may have just kind of, you may be listening in the background and you just did the head twitch. Wait, what did he say? No, you heard me right. Penn State's leading rushers were a tight end and a quarterback, not even the mobile one, by the way, and their leading receiver was a running back. Their wide receivers had 3 catches total yesterday. Guys with WR next to their name had 3 catches for a combined 49 yards. That won't change until they change that position room, is the long and short of it. The padlock stat here, another one. Penn State 3 trips to the red zone, 3 points. Got inside the 5, got first and goal at the 3 twice, and came away with 0 points. But if you really zoom it out, what changed? What changed? You can zoom it in so much. You can talk about bad officiating, which there was all over the Big Ten yesterday again. And that's its own show at this point. You could talk about that. You could talk about missed opportunities. You could talk about what a freak play that interception was in the end zone. All this is true, but that's in the macro, that's in the micro. Zoom it out, macro for a second. What really changed? Because I feel like we've seen this game half a dozen times at this point between these two teams. What really changed? Nothing. Nothing. Ohio State's just a little bit better than you each time. They never seem to bring their A game. You put up a good fight, but you've got opportunity. In this case, golden opportunity in your lap, and you can't do anything offensively. And it feels like you're just sitting around waiting for them to take the game. They do take the game, and that's it. But at the same time, you know me, if you've watched the show long enough to know I'm not selling any James Franklin stock. You just got the same old, same old. So that's not the worst thing in the world. It's the worst thing in the world if you suck and you've got the same old, same old. Penn State doesn't. Penn State's a pretty good to a really good program, then period. At the end of that sentence, nothing more, nothing less than that. It's long been a theory of mine that James Franklin is the most properly rated and Penn State's the most properly rated team and program in the country because they beat everyone they're supposed to and they pretty much only lose to the folks who are favored over them. That gets old for a Penn State fan. I know. I talked to a number of you after the game yesterday who hung around there, and I get it. You want to be great. You don't just want to be good. And you pack that place every time. I get it. But speaking as an outsider, my advice / my thought on Penn State's maybe a little bit different than the outside world. The rest of the outside world. So we're all outsiders. But the rest of the outside world, I've heard a number of takes today. they look at Penn State and they say, you just need to settle for being what you are. You'll never be this, you'll never be that. Well, I mean, maybe they're right. I don't know that. I would think that in this uncertain time in college football, nothing is etched in stone. But I would say standard operating procedures gotten you about as far as you're going to go. So if averaging 9.5 wins, whatever they average per year, is good enough, then it is enough. I don't get the sense that's good enough, man. Every time I go up there, I talked to James Franklin on Friday up there. I talked to a number of their coaches, talked to their players on Friday. Those folks are just as all in and just as jacked up and hungry as any other staff and any other program in America. There's no complacency there. It's just they keep swinging and they don't quite land it on someone's jaw. And maybe one day they course correct 20 degrees. Maybe one day you wake up and they've landed 2 portal wide receivers that totally change the game, and elsewhere they're close enough to where that puts them over the top. Maybe that happens. I just know to not take being really good for granted in this sport. It's no consolation when you can't be great or you haven't been great. I know it's no consolation, but I'm a little different in that I don't think the ceiling on Penn State is as fixed, maybe as some people think it is, only because I don't think anything about college football is fixed right now permanently the way some think it is. So, and by the way, I appreciate a lot of you guys watching live. Make sure you subscribe. You may just be watching the recap of this video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. We do this show free 3 times a week. We'd like to keep it that way. It costs you nothing to subscribe. I saw someone today say, yeah, Ohio State won, but they're a flawed team. Yes, welcome to college football 2024. They all are. They all are. Oregon looks as good as anyone to me right now, and they nearly got beat by both the teams from Idaho earlier in this season. Now, Oregon looks like a much better team than they did early in the season. Point being, don't be trying to discount someone's accomplishment right now, talking to me, by saying they're a flawed team. Yeah, they are. They sure are. And Georgia is, and Texas is, and Alabama is, and everybody is. Everybody is right now. So it's about who can mask their flaws, and here's what we have to wait for. We got to wait to see what Ohio State bottles up out of this. Man, Jim Knowles deserves a lot of credit for yesterday. I think Chip Kelly deserves a lot of credit for yesterday. Those guys were able to scratch out enough offensively and could have been more. You had a touchback down there near the goal line. So they went in there and they did enough offensively. Because keep in mind, now going into this game, there were some people who thought they'd get shut down because their offensive line was that horrifically bad and exposed the week before. And they went in front of 111,000, and they played Penn State's Super Bowl, took their best shot, and they came out on top. Penn State's ceiling is pretty clearly defined here. I don't know that Ohio State's ceiling is defined yet. So that's the great unknown coming out of games like this. When you got teams, the conclusion of Bama LSU this Saturday night will be the same way. Someone's going to win that game, and then you'll find yourself asking, all right, is this winning team, just like Ohio State now, are they going to bottle this up? Are they going to be the team that also looks like Oregon looks right now, where they get that downhill November momentum working for them, and they're all of a sudden the team that is an unequivocal number 1, number 2, co-favorite sort of to win it all? It is a wait-and-see moment right now as we enter early November.